The stars had always been quiet, too quiet for humans who had learned to watch, to listen, and to wait. For decades, Earth had observed the galaxy, tracking alien civilizations, cataloging their fleets, their weapons, their wars. Humanity had learned the patterns, the rhythms of space politics, and the dangerous arrogance of other species. And in all those decades, humans had done one thing consistently. They had held back. Earth had sent warnings before, subtle but clear. Messages to alien governments, broadcast to interstellar alliances, even encrypted signals hidden in space debris. We are capable. Do not test us. The warnings were polite, cautious, almost shy, but they were ignored. The galaxy had laughed. Alien fleets hovered near human colonies, stripped resources from moons, left destruction in their wake and moved on, never believing that Earth could fight back. Captain Lila Moreno stared at the view screen of the Earth Defense Fleet's command ship, her eyes locked on the flickering lights of Jupiter's orbit. The Jarek fleet had appeared near Ganymede, a mining expedition disguised as a diplomatic mission. "Sir," she said, her voice steady but tense, "they've arrived. The Zarek are in orbit. They're not here to negotiate. They're here to take." Admiral Chen, seated behind her in the dim command room, rubbed his temples and exhaled slowly. He was an old man, weathered by decades of service, who had seen humanity fight wars and survive disasters, yet he had never seen them face the galaxy this way. "They always underestimate us," he said quietly. There was pride in his tone, but also the weight of responsibility. "Always." Lila's hands tightened around the console. "Not anymore," she whispered to herself, but the words carried through the room like a spark. The entire fleet seemed to sense it. The shift in the air, the tension of decades reaching their breaking point. Humanity had been patient, careful, invisible. But patience had limits, and the time for waiting was over. Outside the command ship, the stars reflected off the hulls of Earth's newest battle cruisers, sleek and deadly, hiding technology no alien had ever imagined. The humans had built them in secret, refined weapons in silence, trained crews for scenarios that even the most paranoid alien generals wouldn't have dreamed of. Humanity had been preparing not for war, but for survival. Now it was about more than survival. It was about recognition. "Captain," a junior officer called out, "they've deployed drones near the mining rigs. They're scanning for defenses." Lila nodded. "Let them scan. Let them see how wrong they are." Her voice carried no fear, only resolve. Each human in the command room felt it, a fire that had been dormant for generations. They were ready. Humanity had grown tired of hiding, tired of being underestimated, tired of being treated as a weak, insignificant species. The first salvo would not be random. It would be precise, targeted, a message more powerful than any words. Humanity would not strike to destroy. They would strike to awaken fear, to remind the galaxy that Earth had been holding back all along. The moment arrived with a silent hum of energy across the fleet. Lila pressed the activation sequence, sending a controlled energy pulse toward the Jarek flagship. It was calculated, just enough to disable their shields for a moment, just enough to show humans could reach anywhere in the solar system with devastating precision. On board the alien ship, Commander Vrock's eyes widened in disbelief. What is happening?" he shouted at his officers. Explosions flared across the Ganymede orbit, shaking the enemy vessel. The humans had struck without warning, without provocation, and with skill no alien had expected. "They've been holding back," one officer stammered. "For decades. They've been hiding their strength, hiding everything." Across the galaxy, the message began to spread, faster than any transmission could travel. Humans were no longer hiding. Humans were no longer patient. Humans were ready. The underdogs, the primitive species from a small blue planet, were now a force that demanded attention. Back on the command ship, Lila exhaled, her heart heavy with the weight of what they had done. There would be consequences and lives would be at risk, But for the first time she felt the thrill of humanity stepping into its true place in the galaxy. They were no longer invisible. They were no longer underestimated, and in that moment, as the first human pulse of power lit up the darkness of space, Lila whispered to herself and to every human who had ever felt small in the vast universe, "This is only the beginning." The stars had been quiet for too long. Now Earth had spoken. The Jarek fleet hadn't known fear before. Their ships were enormous, armed with weapons designed to crush worlds, but in the cold silence of space, they realized they had underestimated humanity. Explosions rippled through Ganymede's orbit, sending shards of ice and rock spinning into the void. The humans weren't just attacking, they were sending a message. Commander Vrock's voice trembled as he barked orders to his crew. "Shields at maximum. Target their weapons." But every move the Jarek made was anticipated. Earth's fleet moved with precision, their weapons guided by intelligence no alien had expected them to have. It was as if the humans could see the future, predicting every maneuver, every tactic, every weak point. On the bridge of the flagship Valiant, Captain Lila Moreno's eyes were locked on the holographic displays, her fingers flying over the controls. Her heart beat fast, not with fear, but with determination. Each strike was calculated, each decision weighted with responsibility. This was more than a battle. It was humanity's first step into a new chapter of galactic history. "Report." Lila's voice cut through the hum of the ship. "Enemy shields compromised, Captain," the officer replied. "Their command ship is faltering." "They are confused. Panicked." "Good," Lila said softly, almost to herself. "Let them see what we've been holding back." Across the galaxy, news of the attack spread faster than light. Alien races who had once mocked Earth's warnings were now whispering in fear. Humans were no longer hiding. Humans were no longer patient. Humans were no longer the species to underestimate. Back on Earth, millions watched as the transmission from the fleet showed the Jarek's flagship shudder and flicker. It was a spectacle unlike anything humanity had broadcast before. A reminder that Earth had the power to defend itself, and more. People cheered in the streets, not out of hatred for the aliens, but out of relief, pride, and the dawning realization that their species was finally being taken seriously. But not everyone was cheering. Among the bridge crew there was the weight of responsibility, a knowledge that each strike, each action, carried consequences. For every ship destroyed, for every alien life affected, humanity's path became more complicated. Lila felt it deep in her chest. The burden of being the first humans to declare without words, "We are done holding back." Vrock's crew scrambled frantically. "Reinforcements are incoming," one officer shouted. "We cannot hold against them." "They are too precise," Vrock admitted, his claws trembling over the console. "They've been hiding this." "Hiding everything. And now." His voice faltered as the realization sank in. Humans had always been capable, and now they were awake. The humans didn't celebrate the destruction. They paused to evacuate civilians from mining stations, to ensure that the Jarek workers who had no choice in the attack were safe. Every action was controlled, deliberate. Humanity was showing the galaxy that power without responsibility was meaningless. Lila's second-in-command, Lieutenant Rajan, approached cautiously. "Captain, the flagship is crippled." "Do we strike again?" She shook her head. "No, this is not a slaughter. This is a warning. Let them live. Let them understand. We are powerful, but we are not monsters." The message had been sent, and it was clear. Humanity had power that no one had imagined. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. The humans had been underestimated for centuries, but now they had chosen to be seen. And the sight of a small, determined species standing against the mightiest fleets in the galaxy was terrifying and awe-inspiring. Later, as the human fleet regrouped, silence fell over the bridge. No one spoke. Everyone felt the weight of history. Lila stared at the stars, thinking of every life on Earth, every person who had ever doubted humanity's place in the galaxy. They were no longer shadows. They were a storm, and the galaxy would remember that storm. The first strike was only the beginning. The humans had spoken without words, through action, through precision, through courage. Their message was clear. We warned you. We've been holding back, and now, we're done. In the stillness of space, as the Jarek fleet limped away, their confidence shattered, Lila whispered, not for the crew but for herself. The galaxy will never forget this day. And neither will we. The stars were quiet again, but this time humanity had filled that silence with their presence. The news of Earth's first strike spread across the galaxy like a supernova. It didn't travel slowly through official channels or diplomatic couriers. It exploded through every system, every network, every fleet that had ever underestimated humans. Alien empires that had once laughed at Earth now trembled. Humans were no longer the small backward species they thought they were. Humans were a force to be reckoned with. On the planet Xylora Prime, the High Council convened in a panic. The council chamber was massive, filled with holographic displays and alien leaders from dozens of species. Beings with scales, wings, and multiple limbs all spoke at once, their voices overlapping in anger and fear. They cannot be allowed to continue, one shouted. A single world striking like this? Impossible! Another voice, quieter but sharp, intervened. Perhaps we misjudged them. Perhaps Earth has been hiding its true power all along. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some called for immediate retaliation, fleets ready to obliterate Earth before it grew stronger. Others urged caution, suggesting negotiation, diplomacy, treaties. But the humans' actions had already sent a message that could not be ignored. Earth would not bow, would not hide, would not be underestimated. Meanwhile, in orbit around Earth, Lila Moreno watched the galaxy react. Her crew worked in quiet efficiency, repairing minor damages, scanning for any sign of retaliation. She could feel it, the tension in every human on the bridge. The galaxy had noticed them. The galaxy feared them, and the knowledge filled her chest with both pride and worry. Lieutenant Rajan approached her quietly. Captain, they're convening a council. Multiple fleets are mobilizing. We might see a coordinated response soon. Lila nodded. Let them come. Let them see what they're up against. But we must remain vigilant. This is only the beginning. Across distant star systems, spies reported the human fleet's movements. Alien commanders shook with disbelief as they studied the humans' tactics. Every move had been precise, almost surgical, showing not just strength but intelligence, strategy, and discipline. The humans were not reckless, they were careful, deliberate, and terrifyingly efficient. On the surface of Earth, people celebrated cautiously. Millions had watched the battle unfold in live transmissions. Children clutched their parents' hands in awe. Old veterans of past wars wept quietly, and scientists smiled at the proof that humanity had reached a new level of technological mastery. Humanity had always dreamed of the stars, but now the galaxy was listening and fearing. But the victory also brought unease. Families of the fleet's crew worried for the soldiers in space, knowing that every action taken could provoke a stronger retaliation. Politicians debated, wondering if Earth's bold move would lead to war. And Lila, standing on the bridge at the edge of the solar system, felt the crushing weight of responsibility. Humans had spoken, but the galaxy's response was unknown, and the cost could be unimaginable. In the quiet of her quarters, she stared at a photograph of her younger brother, lost in a mining accident years ago. We fight for them, she whispered to herself. For everyone. For every human who cannot be here to see this day. Her communicator beeped urgently. Captain, a transmission from the Andari Republic. Lila's eyes narrowed as she opened the message. A voice, calm but firm, addressed Earth's fleet. Humans, we have seen your demonstration. Your strength is undeniable. But know this. The galaxy does not forgive easily. Choose your next actions wisely. You have announced your presence. Now live with the consequences. The message ended, leaving silence in the bridge. The calm warning carried more weight than any threat. The galaxy was taking notice, and humans were no longer small, hidden, or ignored. Lila turned to her crew. They've heard us, she said quietly. They know we exist. They know we are powerful. But they don't understand one thing. They have underestimated humanity for too long. And we will not repeat their mistake. Across the galaxy, fleets began to move, alliances formed in secret, and whispers of Earth's new power spread like wildfire. Some races sought peace, others sought war. But all knew one undeniable truth: humanity had changed. Earth was no longer a planet to watch quietly from afar. Earth had declared itself awake. And as Lila looked out at the stars, the lights of distant alien fleets blinking like ominous fireflies, she felt a surge of hope and fear together. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but for the first time in history, humanity would not hide. Humanity would not wait. Humanity would fight. The first warning had been given. Now the galaxy would see the humans in full force, and it would never be the same again. Victory had a price, and humanity was learning that in the hardest way. The first strike had shaken the galaxy, but it had also opened the door to consequences that no one on Earth could ignore. Ships had been lost, brave crews had fallen, and families on distant colonies waited in silence, unsure if they would ever see their loved ones again. Captain Lila Moreno stood on the bridge of the flagship Valiant, watching the aftermath unfold. Her eyes traced the damage reports scrolling across the screen: minor hull breaches, shield failures, and casualties. Each number represented a human life, each life a story, a family, a dream cut short. She clenched her fists. She had anticipated resistance, but she hadn't anticipated the weight of responsibility pressing so heavily on her heart. Lieutenant Rajan approached, his face pale. "Captain, we've lost 3 more ships in the outskirts of the asteroid field. Casualties are high. Families are asking for answers. The media, they're broadcasting live. The public is scared." Lila nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Tell them the truth. We fight for them. We protect them. Every loss is tragic, but every action brings humanity one step closer to being recognized as we deserve." Even as they spoke, the echoes of their victory rippled across Earth. Millions had watched the transmissions, and the emotions were raw. People wept in the streets, proud but afraid. Children clung to their parents, asking questions they weren't ready to understand. Scientists, politicians, and ordinary citizens all felt the shockwave of humanity stepping into the galactic stage. And yet, in the quiet of her private quarters, Lila allowed herself a moment to grieve. She looked at a hollow photo of her younger brother, lost in a mining accident years ago. "We're fighting for them," she whispered. "For every human who cannot fight for themselves. For every dream we've ever had of reaching the stars." The galaxy was watching, and some were already plotting retaliation. Alien fleets had begun to move. Secret alliances were forming, and whispers of Earth's newfound strength were spreading like wildfire. Every decision humanity made now carried weight far beyond their own solar system. One wrong step could spark a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, and yet the humans persevered. Even amid grief, even amid fear, they found determination. The bridge crew of the Valiant worked tirelessly, repairing damaged systems, coordinating supply convoys, and preparing for the inevitable next strike. Each officer, each sailor, each soldier carried their own burden: loss, fear, anxiety, but also the knowledge that they were part of something greater, something historic. One evening, as the artificial lights dimmed and the stars outside seemed to shine brighter than ever, Lila walked to the observation deck. She watched the distant Earth, a fragile blue jewel in the blackness of space. She thought of the families who had waved goodbye to their loved ones, the children who would grow up in a galaxy that now knew humanity's name, and the people who had lost their lives in this first confrontation. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, are we doing the right thing?" It was a junior officer, barely out of training, his hands trembling as he looked at the stars. Lila turned to him, her expression gentle but firm. "We are," she said. "Every choice we make has a cost, But we cannot hide anymore. We cannot wait for others to decide our fate. We fight not for glory, not for conquest, but for survival and for respect. And sometimes, survival comes with sacrifice. The officer nodded, taking comfort in her words, though fear still lingered in his eyes. Lila knew that look well. It was the same look she had carried when she joined the fleet, young and untested. But experience, loss, and determination had forged her into the captain she was now. And she knew that every officer, every soldier, every human in the fleet would carry that same weight. As the fleet prepared for the next phase of their campaign, a quiet resolve settled over the bridge. Humanity would no longer be underestimated. They had faced their first strike, survived, and proven that they could fight with strategy, courage, and heart. But they also knew the truth. The galaxy was vast, full of enemies, and full of uncertainty. The personal cost would only grow. And yet Lila believed in her people. She believed that the strength of humanity was not just in their weapons or their technology, but in their hearts. They could endure loss. They could endure fear. And they could endure the weight of history itself, because now, humanity had stepped fully into the galaxy's stage and there was no turning back. The stars were quiet again, but in the silence a new kind of power stirred. The power of humans who had chosen to stand tall. Even when the cost was immense, the galaxy had taken notice. Alien fleets that once ignored Earth were now on high alert, coordinating strikes, sending warnings, and testing humanity's defenses. The humans knew this moment would come, the true test of their readiness, courage, and unity. And now it was here. The outer colonies far beyond Mars and Jupiter were the first to face the storm. Millions of humans lived there, mining asteroids, building research stations, and maintaining humanity's reach into the stars. They were unarmed, unprepared for an invasion on this scale. And yet, they were about to witness the strength their species had been quietly building for decades. Captain Lila Moreno stood on the bridge of the Valiant, scanning the incoming fleets. She could see the combined forces of several alien civilizations approaching at unprecedented speed. "They've come together," she muttered, her voice tight with determination. "They've underestimated us for the last time." Lieutenant Rajan, standing beside her, frowned. "Their numbers, they're overwhelming. We can't hold them all alone." Lila shook her head. "We're not alone. Humanity has allies in every colony, every station, every ship. We fight as one species now, and that unity, that's our strength." The battle began with sudden ferocity. Alien lasers tore through the void, colliding with human shields in blinding bursts of light. Ships collided, exploded, and disintegrated in clouds of debris. The humans fought with precision and coordination no enemy had expected, striking weak points with surgical accuracy. Every human crew, every captain, every soldier had trained for this moment. Every strike was purposeful, every maneuver deliberate. On the bridge of the Valiant, Lila felt the pressure of command like a physical weight pressing down on her chest. Orders were shouted, relayed, executed. She watched as smaller ships intercepted enemy fighters, as shields held against overwhelming fire, as humans pushed back the alien forces with ingenuity and courage. But the cost was clear. Ships were lost, lives were lost, and the screams of those who fell echoed in her mind. Yet humanity did not falter. Lila knew that the fight was about more than survival. It was about respect. Every alien fleet they repelled, every victory they achieved was a message to the galaxy. Earth would not be ignored. Earth would not be underestimated. In the heart of the battle, Lila activated the fleet's special weapon, a massive energy pulse capable of disabling multiple enemy ships at once. The pulse surged through space like a wave of fire, knocking alien shields offline, throwing fleets into chaos. The humans pressed the advantage, striking decisively while minimizing unnecessary destruction. A transmission reached Lila's console. It was the flagship of the alien coalition, demanding surrender. "Humans, yield now or face complete annihilation," the voice thundered. Lila's fingers hovered over the comms, then she pressed transmit. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of every human who had ever lived. "This is Earth, we warned you. We've been holding back, but now, we're done playing nice." The message spread across the battlefield, carried by human ships to every corner of the alien forces. Confusion rippled through the enemy fleets. They had expected fear. They had expected surrender. But humanity was unshaken, united and prepared. In the midst of the chaos, Lila glimpsed a young cadet, barely 18, piloting a small fighter against overwhelming odds. She saw his fear, his determination, and the courage that came from fighting for something greater than himself. Humanity's strength was not only in technology, it was in heart, in unity, in the refusal to be broken. Hours passed, lasers burned, ships fell, explosions lit the void, and slowly the tide turned. The alien fleets, unable to anticipate humanity's strategy and resilience, began to retreat. Victory was not absolute, but it was undeniable. Humanity had held the line. Humanity had fought back. Humanity had won. As silence returned to the battlefield, Lila stood on the bridge, her eyes scanning the wreckage of both human and alien ships. She felt exhaustion, sorrow, and relief all at once. Millions had risked everything, and the cost had been high. But the message had been delivered. The galaxy had seen Earth's power, its courage, and its determination. Lila turned to her crew, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We have fought for our people. We have fought for our home, and we have shown the galaxy that humanity will not be ignored. This is only the beginning." In the vast darkness of space, the stars seemed to shine brighter that night. Humanity had faced its greatest test and had emerged stronger, more united and more determined than ever. The turning point had come, and with it the dawn of a new era. The galaxy had been warned. Earth was no longer hiding, and from this day forward, the universe would never underestimate humanity again. The battle was over, but the echoes of war lingered in the silence of space. Ships drifted, broken and smoldering, some human, some alien. Humanity had won the fight, but the cost was clear. Thousands of lives had been lost, colonies had been damaged, and the weight of the day hung heavy on every soul in the fleet. Captain Lila Moreno stood on the bridge of the flagship Valiant, staring at the stars beyond. She could still feel the heat of battle in her bones, the adrenaline that had carried her through hours of chaos. But now, in the quiet aftermath, grief and exhaustion settled over her like a shadow. She thought of the young cadets who had fought bravely, of crews who would never return to Earth, of the families who would never embrace their loved ones again. Lieutenant Rajan approached, his face solemn. "Captain, we held them off. The fleets are retreating. The colonies are safe. For now." Lila nodded slowly. "We did what we had to do, but it doesn't feel like a victory, not yet." She looked down at her hands, trembling slightly. "Every life lost. It weighs on me." Across the human colonies, people were beginning to process what had happened. Millions had watched the battle unfold in live transmissions. There was pride, yes, a fierce, glowing pride in their species' strength. But there was also fear, sorrow, and uncertainty. Families mourned those who had been lost, and children struggled to understand why the stars had become dangerous overnight. On the bridge, the crew moved quietly, repairing systems, recharging shields, and scanning for any sign of renewed attacks. The humans had fought well, with courage and precision, but the galaxy was still a dangerous place. Alliances of alien races were forming. Fleets were regrouping, and whispers of retaliation floated through space like shadows waiting to strike. Humanity had shown its strength, but it had also announced its presence, and enemies were paying attention. Lila retreated to her quarters for a brief moment of solitude. She gazed at a hollow photo of her younger brother, who had died years ago in a mining accident. "We fight for them," she whispered. "For every human who cannot fight for themselves. For every dream we've ever had of reaching the stars." Her communicator beeped urgently. It was a message from Earth's government. "Captain Moreno, the people are demanding answers. The world watches you. They want reassurance. They want hope. She sighed, knowing that hope and fear were intertwined. Tell them, she said to her aide, that humanity has survived and we will continue to survive. That we are strong, united, and ready to defend our home. But tell them, too, that the cost of power is never free. As the fleet regrouped, Lila walked through the corridors observing her crew. Young cadets hugged each other in relief, veterans silently cleaned and repaired equipment, and scientists analyzed the alien technology captured during the battle. Every human she passed carried the marks of the day, tired faces, aching bodies, and hearts heavy with grief. But there was also a spark of determination, pride, and hope. Humanity had faced the galaxy's judgment and had survived. In the aftermath, alien emissaries began to send messages of caution and respect. Some sought peace, some sought alliances, and some plotted revenge. But the humans' actions had spoken louder than any words. Earth had announced itself to the galaxy, and there was no turning back. Lila returned to the observation deck, staring at the distant Earth suspended in the blackness of space. Cities glimmered, lights burning bright against the night, a fragile blue jewel in an uncaring universe. Humanity had survived its first true test, but she knew the path ahead would be difficult. Wars would come, enemies would strike, and the cost of standing proud in the galaxy would never end. Yet despite the grief, the losses, and the uncertainty, a quiet pride settled in her chest. Humanity had faced fear, chaos, and the vast unknown, and had refused to bow. Humanity had fought as one species with courage, intelligence, and heart. And that unity, that strength, was something no alien could underestimate. A young cadet approached her nervously, eyes wide. "Captain, were we really ready for this?" Lila smiled gently, her eyes reflecting the stars. "We were ready in ways we couldn't even imagine. And we will be ready again. Every loss teaches us, every victory strengthens us. Humanity is alive and we will survive. That is what makes us strong." The galaxy had been warned. Earth had shown its power, its courage, and its heart. The first battle was over, but the story of humanity's rise among the stars had only just begun. And in the quiet of the observation deck, Lila whispered to herself and to every human who had ever dreamed of reaching the stars, "We survived. We fought, and we will never be underestimated again." The stars twinkled above, serene and infinite, but humanity's light now shone among them, a reminder to the galaxy that Earth would no longer hide, and that humanity was awake. Decades had passed since Earth's first strike shook the galaxy. Wars had come and gone, alliances had shifted, and alien civilizations had learned a hard truth. Humans were not to be underestimated. Earth had risen from obscurity to prominence, and humanity had carved its place among the stars with courage, intelligence, and heart. Captain Lila Moreno, now older, grayed at the temples but still sharp and commanding, stood on the observation deck of the flagship Valiant. The galaxy stretched before her, infinite and vast, dotted with stars and distant worlds that had once seemed untouchable. She had seen fleets rise and fall, colonies rebuilt from ashes, and countless young cadets grow into leaders. Every victory, every loss, every decision had led humanity to this moment. She remembered the first strike, the day humanity had finally stopped holding back. The memory of the Zarek fleet, the pulse of energy that had sent shockwaves across the solar system, and the feeling of standing tall against a galaxy that doubted them. It was still vivid. But now she saw the long-term impact. The galaxy had changed. Humans were respected, feared, and acknowledged as a power that could not be ignored. A young cadet approached her hesitantly, wide-eyed. "Captain Moreno, were we really ready back then?" Lila smiled softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "No," she said honestly. "We weren't ready in every way. We lost friends. We faced fear we had never imagined. But we were ready in the ways that mattered most. We were ready in our hearts. Courage, unity, and the will to survive. That is what made us strong. The cadet nodded, inspired as he gazed at the stars. He represented the next generation of humans who would continue the legacy, a legacy built on bravery, sacrifice, and the refusal to be small. Across the galaxy, humanity's influence had spread. Former enemies had become tentative allies, trade routes opened, knowledge flowed, and species who had once mocked Earth now came to learn from it. But no human forgot the lessons of the past. Power carried responsibility, and the cost of survival was never free. Lila walked along the corridors of the ship, passing officers who had trained under her guidance. Each of them carried stories, scars, and memories of battles fought. Some had lost family in the early wars, others had faced impossible odds and survived. Together they embodied the spirit of humanity, a species that endured, adapted, and thrived in a galaxy that had once doubted them. In a quiet moment, she returned to the observation deck. Below, Earth shone like a jewel in the darkness, its cities glowing softly against the night. Humanity had rebuilt stronger than ever, and the stars above seemed to welcome them as equals. Lila's eyes softened with pride. The planet they had fought to protect had become more than a home. It had become a symbol of resilience, courage, and hope, she whispered to herself, as she often did, a promise to all those who had fought and those yet to come. We will endure. We will rise. We will be remembered. The young cadets often asked her to tell stories of the early battles, of the first strike, of humanity's struggle to claim its place. Lila would tell them, not as tales of violence, but as lessons in courage, leadership, and unity. She wanted them to understand that being powerful meant responsibility, that bravery meant sacrifice, and that humanity's true strength lay not just in technology, but in heart. And then came a moment that would stay with her forever. A delegation of alien emissaries arrived on Earth, not as conquerors, but as learners, observers, and allies. They had come to see humanity, to witness its strength and its wisdom. Lila watched them with quiet satisfaction. The galaxy had been warned decades ago, and now it had chosen to accept humanity on equal terms. She turned to the stars once more. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but humanity no longer feared its place in it. They had endured losses, faced terrifying enemies, and carried the weight of history itself, and yet they had survived, risen, and thrived. A cadet holding a small model of the Earth Defense Fleet asked softly, "Captain, what comes next?" Lila smiled, her eyes reflecting the infinite stars. "Next," she said, "we continue. We explore, we protect, we grow, and we make sure the galaxy never forgets the lesson Earth taught. Never underestimate humanity." The stars above twinkled like distant promises. Humanity had spoken. Humanity had fought. Humanity had endured. And now, humanity had become a light in the vast darkness of space, a force that would inspire, challenge, and endure for generations to come. The galaxy had been warned. Humanity had acted, and the new era had begun.